Today we're here with a very special guest and friend, Ms. Errin Welty of the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. Errin has been instrumental not only in Viroqua's place in the Main Street community, but also has provided a lot of useful guidance, not only to us as an organization, but then to other entrepreneurs who are considering business opportunities or jumping forward with a step in their life that inevitably a lot of questions spin out of. So we have a couple things that we want to go through today. Nora, do you want to lead us in?
Sure. Well, I just want to start out by saying that Errin Welty is one of my favorite people. Anytime that I have a question, she's my go-to.
Yeah.
So,
and if I have a question, I usually say, "Hey, Nora, can you reach out to Errin Welty? I got a couple questions about this."
Right.
So
I tell people my job is to never let anyone reinvent the wheel, that I'm a resource for all the other random things and mistakes that people made around the state. So if I can help people avoid that and move forward, that's what I like to do.
Yeah. That's super fantastic. I just wish I could have a special button that anytime I need you, you can order things online that way with a one click. It would be really nice to have the one click Errin Welty.
I think that's what texting is.
True enough.
Exactly.
So my name is Nora Roughen-Schmidt. I am here today with Luke Zahm and Errin Welty, and this is 54665. And we are going to start out by talking about placemaking for businesses and why that's something that is a really important part of everything that we do. So Errin, do you want to give us a quick definition of placemaking, or how does placemaking apply to some of the things that you do and the services that you offer and assistance?
Well, placemaking is just the newest term applied to what people have always been trying to do. But placemaking is really at its essence making places that people want to be. If you have a place that people want to spend time, that's what everybody's looking for in the downtown world. And placemaking is just kind of figuring out how to kickstart that process and maybe move it from grassroots to, expedite it and provide some of those tools for people to discover new places a little quicker.
So in that model, when you have communities, would you say what's the split between rural communities that you serve and then the major metropolitan areas of Wisconsin?
Our average community size is 5,500, so
okay.
Most of them are pretty rural. We have a few Milwaukee metro, and depending on what you think is rural, Wausau is rural to some people and very urban to others.
Sure.
So Wausau, La Crosse are big cities.
Yeah. And I think that's something that as an entrepreneur is really, really important to consider. Are you going into a space, are you going into a community that already has an existing reputation, or are you really, really starting from the ground up, trying to establish yourself as a business or identify what you might be able to establish as an identity? What do you usually ask people? Or when you go into a community, what are some identifying characteristics that you look at as a consulting professional?
It's pretty obvious when you go to a community kind of where they're at in that cycle. And all communities have the period where people are moving in and things are growing and there's businesses opening, and then kind of, people are retiring and they're selling businesses. You'll always have that kind of cycle, and sometimes you just have to push through it. But if you do have those new businesses opening, it really can kind of kickstart that movement where you have people okay, we're going to make this a destination again, or maybe we've already had a good reputation, but we're getting stale or we're not serving the new population. So how can we kind of bring new demographics to the community? We do a lot of community surveys around the state, and one of my favorite things when we ask people to prioritize where they want to see a community moving in the next 5 years is to look at by demographic. So people under 35, their top 3 priorities are usually completely different than those over 65, and families with kids have a totally different outset than people who are singles or living alone. So it's kind of interesting to see where those priorities overlap and where they're completely different, and where we can find spaces, if we're talking about placemaking, where those things can meet and overlap, or maybe they're serving different populations at different times of the day. Because we only have so many parks. They have to work for everybody, but not everybody wants playgrounds, nor does everybody want park benches. But how can we fit those together?
That's really amazing. One of the things that the WEDC also is involved in is actually attracting younger talent base to Wisconsin. The workforce age is getting older here, and we definitely want to attract younger entrepreneurs. So as a whole, for like, how do you placemake for an entire state? What does that look like?
Well, you have to locally empower, because there is no, I mean, Wisconsin is beer, cheese, and Packers, but within that, there's a lot of different variety. So we are doing a lot of talent recruitment, and in the Iron Range, they've done, or in Iron County, they've done a lot of surveys, and, where they always thought that winter was a downside of living there, that they had to accommodate or kind of counter. They learned that all the young people that were moving there for winter.
Yeah.
And so they are doubling down on winter. Whereas, in Madison, we don't have winter anymore, really. We have sporadic winter. So how do you, tweak the other offerings? We have foodie culture, or, in Viroqua, you have similar things. So how do we emphasize what different areas have? La Crosse is kind of doubling down on the trails, because they learned that was the number one reason that most of their young professionals had moved there. And the housing stock, because there was cool old houses that were affordable. So it's going to look different everywhere. But yeah, if we have 2.9% unemployment and 900 jobs open on any given day, we're going to need some more people to fill them. Yeah. Unless everyone's going to have twice as many babies, we need to bring them from somewhere.
Sure.
So what does placemaking mean, as it applies to a business? We have a lot of people listening who are starting their business for the first time. They're starting their organization for the first time. What does it mean for a business on a main street?
Yeah, it works a lot the same way. You want to be a business where people want to be. I think lots of people have heard of the third spaces. People think, coffee shops and bowling alleys, those are third places. But a hair salon can be that place. A bike shop can be that place. Anywhere where you're networking with your people. And if you're a business that provides places and spaces and amenities for people to hang out and spend more time and kind of be together and interact. It's all about creating interactions. So it's one reason that a lot of communities are looking at parklets or outdoor seating. Not only does it boost, business revenue, so restaurants can make 65% more, but even hair salons can make more, because you have a place sitting outside your business where people can see people hanging out. And they're like, well, I'm going to go get my hair cut there, because look at all those cool people hanging out. It must be the place to be. So you can provide seating, you can have free coffee so that people can mingle, can linger. You can have pet-friendly businesses. So we can now have pet-friendly, patios at bars, and that's a big thing for some communities. But it's just doing whatever you can to make sure people are invited, welcome, and can linger. Because the longer they stay, the more they're going to spend money, and the more often they're going to visit.
What do you think in that same regard are some creative ways to deliver customer experiences when you're talking about placemaking?
We have a lot of businesses now that are they have almost a whole second business model designed for experiences, because that's what people want. They're not going shopping to buy shoes only. They're going shopping to have experiences. So we have lots of businesses. I tell people there's very rarely going to be a shoe store that opens anymore. But if you're a running store that has shoes, that has custom fit, that has running clubs, that has a coffee bar, you have provided everything that a running community wants to kind of hang together. Similarly, we have lots of boutiques that, people want DIY, so they have an artisan jewelry wall featuring locally made goods. They have classes at night, so you're coming in and doing, jewelry making classes, and then you might have a fashion show where you pair that with things in the store and they buy them. So it's all about creating the experience, and again, the sense to interact with other customers that are like you, because they like the same stuff you do.
Sure. It's like a vertical integration model,
right?
Specifically.
Yeah.
Right. And I want to return to the idea of the parklet just for a moment. For people who are unfamiliar with what a parklet is, can you explain exactly how that works and what materials are used to create one?
Yeah, so lots of communities, will have, you've all been to restaurants with outdoor patios, but if you're a downtown business, unless you happen to have a rear alley that's somewhat attractive and you have access to it, you don't have a spot for an outdoor patio. But it's really critical to restaurant business models today. Even 2/3 of the national restaurants that are expanding, they need a patio. That's a site requirement. They will not look at a site without one. So what people are doing in downtowns is taking a parking space that's in front of a business and turning that into an outdoor patio. So sometimes they'll build it up, lots of times with pallet wood, so that it's kind of flush with the sidewalk, so it's, you don't trip into the tables, and put some railings or some decorative planters around, kind of as a barrier to the road. We've also seen in communities with a lot of truck traffic or really busy thoroughfares, they will build the sidewalk out of the same plywood, and it will go through the parking space, and then the patio seating will be up next to the building, so that have a little more buffer, but you still have the sidewalk space, the accessibility, but you have that outdoor ambiance and the dining and the kind of nightlife, and you can see that there's stuff going on.
That's awesome.
It is awesome.
If you Google parklet, there's amazing designs, but some communities are even doing them where they have, restaurants have permanent ones, but some of them are mobile. So it might be in front of the library one day and they'll station it with little free libraries and loungers, and it might be in front of the sporting goods store the next day and they have like a stationary bike on it. And so it can just move and change, and it's kind of constant discovery. So you have to go visit because there's something different.
And I think that actually really bodes well. Specifically when you're talking about that placemaking idea, a majority of people that actually come into the Driftless Cafe, they are in Viroqua for exactly what you described, an experience. We know that they go and they spend money around the community because they're trying to identify what makes this place special, unique. Why do people talk about it? So I think the placemaking topic is central to the discussion of identity and establishing that identity in a community. How does that work on a community level? How do you put all the players on the field and try and get them pushed in the same direction so that way that identity is not disjointed? Is that something that you dabble in?
Yeah, I don't know that you need all the players. You just need enough players. The biggest rule is that the less money you spend, the less risk there is. So people might be really averse to spending $100,000 on putting lights in trees in a park because that's wasteful. But if you go to Walmart after the Christmas season and you spend $100 on surplus lights and you get a crew of people to hang them up in a tree and you take them down before they start to go bad and go out, then people are like, oh, look at that. That was fun. That was cool. And if you keep it different and changing, then people appreciate it, and it doesn't ever get to the point where you have the naysayers like, oh, well, they're still ugly in the summertime and all the lights are burnt out. It's spending a little enough money that people are not intimidated by wastefulness. So one of our communities that will remain nameless, they saw some of the other communities doing the piano projects with the painted pianos. And those projects work really great in places where they have a music culture and the local music students can play them and decorate them, and there's a connection. But this community just kind of replicated it because it looked cool, and it was a huge outcry because they were ruining these instruments and they were disrespecting instruments, and because there was no group advocating for the need for public performances, it really kind of backfired. So it's figuring out what's locally resonant and what people like to discover and putting that in place rather than, copying what somebody else did and trying to make it yours.
So you're saying that there are instrument advocacy groups?
Sure. There are advocacy groups for everything.
Yes. Awesome. My day is complete. So Errin, you travel the state quite frequently. Is that right?
Yep.
And how many communities are there in Wisconsin? Can you just give a ballpark? Do you have?
Oh, good Lord. I know half of them are under 2,500 in population.
Okay.
I don't know. There's
Okay.
thousands. 2,500.
Thousands. So if we played like a little word cloud association game for the listeners out there where we said a community and you gave me like a placemaking identifying characteristic about that community, do you feel like that's a fair thing? Because I would assume that the majority of communities in Wisconsin that you've worked with, there is something about them that
defines them.
Yeah.
Maybe. Some haven't figured out what that is yet. I'll be honest that some are still trying to figure that out.
Sure. How about Bayfield?
Well, they're the city on the lake.
City on the lake. Okay. Nora, pick one.
Lake Mills.
Oh, Lake Mills has a scary Santa. But they also just rebranded, so they have a square, Central Town Square, but it's actually not square at all. It's more of a triangle, so they're doing shirts that say anything but square with an outline of the geographic grid of the triangle
Nice.
on it. And they also now, I think, have 4 breweries in town, so that's going to be...
Awesome.
There you go.
Lancaster.
Lancaster has Blue Boy Bakery.
Yeah.
They also have a good senior population in a community that focuses on amenities for seniors, which most communities do not, which with our older population is an opportunity. Retirees have money too.
Sure. Eau Claire.
I don't know, they're reinventing themselves. I mean, that the campus and the art center by the river are really going to be something new and different, and I think it'll be a lot different than what it is today.
Yeah. You know, I've done some actual collaboration dinners with Nathan Berg, the chef at the Oxbow Hotel. And the Oxbow Hotel is, you know, it's kind of this conglomerate of investors that came together. The owner of Volume 1, which has been a long time magazine and record store in the Eau Claire area, and then Justin Vernon from Bon Iver. And I when I was on stage that night talking about this dinner, this idea of placemaking is so essential because Eau Claire is literally redefining itself. It is like I would say quickly becoming one of the coolest music scenes in the Midwest, right? With the Eau Claire Festival, but then also, you know, the recording studio there that's bringing people in, and the Oxbow has space for live music. And it's fascinating.
It's unique, and it's definitely locally them, but it's also something totally different and unexpected, which is huge. I mean, Nora and I were in Winona for the Upper Mississippi Main Street Conference last week, and the guy from Winnipeg who manages the Forks, which is kind of a urban venue, they have a pop-up restaurant that shows up on the river for 3 weeks, sells $200 a plate. You dine in a tent on the ice in Winnipeg, which is cold.
Yeah.
And it sells out instantly for 3 weeks. So if you have a limited time thing that, you know, fear of missing out is strong.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's awesome. Do you want to do another word association?
Sure. You're into this today?
Wausau.
Wausau is doing a ton. Some of their outdoor recreation stuff. I mean, they've got the Whitewater Park, which has not been maximized. But we also were there for actually a nighttime hospitality tech visit last year because they have a huge music scene and lots of venues downtown on the square. They have a new distillery that opened in the train station. But we noticed they're a city that takes the bike racks out in the winter, as many do. And we counted 12 bikes chained to trees because people are fat biking and still doing that kind of thing in the winter. So they're reevaluating kind of how they can attract and market to that demographic and utilize that. So we talked about all kinds of cool things to have nighttime stuff on the square. Can we do like glow-in-the-dark volleyball or glow-in-the-dark paddleboard outings or cool stuff that you can see at night and attract those people who are out looking for something to do?
Cool. West Bend.
They have the theater and the Wisconsin Art Museum on the river.
Yeah.
They're also one of the first communities that took and applied their facade loan program to the riverfront to make the river walk the focus and make the back sides of the buildings as cool as the front sides so people would want to explore back by the river.
That's awesome. I did a cooking event there at the museum this summer.
It's pretty.
It's really beautiful. And I mean, it is. It's like this. You can tell that there's a resurgence, not only of money, but of interest in the community. Last but not least, how about Viroqua, the 54665? What are the placemaking characteristics or the identifying characteristics that you see here?
I think you're a community that has a strong reputation, but it's not always easy for people to plug into that when they get here if they don't have a destination. So if they're coming here and they're going to a business or they're going on a fishing outing or they know what trail they're going to ride, it's easy for them to plug in. But if they just show up in Viroqua and say, hey, I've heard lots about this space, it's not always easy to figure out where to start. Like, where do I plug into something? So that's the piece which is a good problem to have, right? You have people who know that they want to come here. It's just making sure that when they get here, they know how to access all the stuff that is them, that is the stuff that they want to do.
Sure. So with that in mind, and this is the real, the $20,000 brain buster, right? You have businesses that are set up and established here. You do have people coming to Viroqua and Vernon County in general to experience a little bit of it, but there are obstacles, right? Specifically for us, what are the next best steps to take to remove some of those obstacles and barriers?
I think there's a couple low-hanging fruit that you can control. I mean, there's lots of things where if you had $1 million and you could spend money on arches and gateways and wayfinding and, cool sidewalk those would be amazing. And if you should win the lottery, you might, I guess we missed that. If you
We missed the
contact the
last
guy that won the lottery, maybe he can help. But there's a couple things that, you have control over. So businesses, there's people who are already showing up. So how do we make sure that those people who are showing up find something else? So some of our communities, if you buy coffee at Kickapoo, you get 50% off accessory at the clothing boutique. And if you buy a scarf at the clothing boutique, you get a free small cup of coffee at the coffee shop. So those people who are already shopping, they're predisposed to want to go somewhere else. So if you refer them directly, hey, if you like our coffee, you'd really like this shopping destination. Or if you liked lunch, you should really check out, ice cream across the way. Those people are more likely to be receptive. So it's really cheap, direct marketing that's effective is one way. And the other thing I think is common for communities, it's one of the top questions we get is, well, people aren't always open. You have customers that are, that are done trout fishing in the evening. Well, not all the businesses are open. And people just say, oh, businesses should be open when the people want to shop. Well, there's not that many of them. And, people have lives. They can't hire someone to work 24/7 because it doesn't pay for itself yet. So coming up with things that people can do, whether it's art tours or Instagram photo tours are becoming really popular, where you have must photograph destinations in the area, things that they can do on their own, so that when they're done with whatever they came to do, there's something else for them. Because people will drive a quarter of the time that they spend somewhere. So if they're just driving for dinner, maybe they spend an hour and a half. But that's, a 20-minute drive tops. But if you want them to come an hour, then they need 4 hours worth of stuff to do. Mm-hmm. If they're coming on a Saturday afternoon, maybe there's not 4 hours worth of shopping. You got an hour to eat dinner, then, a bike ride. But you got to cobble the stuff together and kind of present it to them on a plate so that they don't have to figure it out for themselves.
Yeah, that's really good. One of the things I wanted to ask, too, as we are approaching the holiday season and many people are focusing on shopping locally and shopping small for the holidays, which is fantastic. It's something that we really count on in Viroqua. What are some things in a retail space? People are shopping locally and shopping small, looking for an experience. They want to touch and they want to feel and they want to do something a little bit different than hopping on the internet and purchasing gifts for Christmas. What are some things that downtown retailers or restaurants can do to get people excited about that local experience and make them feel engaged and really let them touch and feel, like a kids museum for adults shopping?
I think the more you have stories to go with things, so if you have locally made things, put a poster about the artist or have, one of your artisans each day be in your shop to meet people. If you can give a present and say, hey, I met the lady who made this scarf, or hey, the woman that makes this jewelry also has a goat farm, or anything like that, makes it personal and makes it relevant that it's local. People want to shop local because it's the right thing to do, but they'd rather shop locally where they know somebody, not just I went to, you can, there's multiple ways to shop local. You can go to the pharmacy and buy something made in China and you're still shopping locally. You're supporting the pharmacy. That's great. But you can also shop local and locally, made or assembled or kind of put together. There's a couple communities that are doing, they have ladies' nights out or wine walks, and they're doing gift registries in the spaces. So should family members or spouses want to go back afterward and see what maybe they wanted to buy, you can do that. So you can kind of create that local connection that way. Or, being able to bundle is good. So if you can, get a gift basket or, one for every sibling or things like that, people love to be able to do that kind of thing.
Sure, that's smart.
I love that idea. That would really prevent me from airballing on probably 90% of my Christmas gifts, which I try and shop locally and do, but then I always end up like, and I freak out. I'm like a deer in headlights. And
well, there's not a wish list for downtown. I mean, you can go online and you can make a thing.
Right,
You can look in the gift bet, like, oh, she's starred these things, so those are safe bets.
Right.
It's nice to have that same level of security locally.
So you've been listening to Errin Welty, WEDC consultant on the 54665, all things economic development and rural development related. We're here today with Nora Roughen-Schmidt, and I am Luke Zahm. And Nora, what do you got?
Errin, what's the final thought of the day for placemaking? If you could give people 3 things to work on as far as placemaking in their communities or in their business to be successful, what would they be?
Well, rule number 1 is figure out what's not there that people want to do. If people want to, you can think of kind of the hierarchy of needs, right? So there's eating, there's drinking, there's sitting, so shelter. What is not there now that would let people have more fun, spend more time, linger longer? Is number 1. Number 2 is test it. So placemaking is really a process and not a final product. So try something, spend $100. If you think that lighting is really important, spend $100 on twinkle lights. See if that brings more people. If it does, invest, $1,000 in really cool lights and make it work. If it doesn't, then you're out $100 and you had some pretty lights for the season. So spend the time to test it and see what happens and then tweak it before you commit to something huge and impactful. Then you're maximizing what you're doing. And then 3rd probably is figure out who's missing. So is there someone that's not, this is more on a community level because individual businesses know who their customers are, but on a community level, who's not present? Lots of people, communities always tell me they're family friendly. I was like, that's great. Where would I take my 5-year-old? And they're like, well, for ice cream. I'm like, okay, 10 minutes. Where else? And there's nowhere else. So where else are we not accommodating people that we could do a better job? Because they're already in your community. Again, it's way easier to get them to spend more time than recruit whole new people to show up.
Awesome.
Very good.
Thanks a lot for coming in, Errin.
Sure.
See you soon.
Number 1, linger longer. Number 2, tweak your twinkle. Number 3, I didn't make a funny